Welcome, everyone. Thank you. AP is here with me today, Miguel,
How's it going,
and
everybody?
thank you so much. We just want to start demystifying some of the generative AI tools that we use that a lot of people are interested in using. And we want to make it easier for you to be able to just jump on different things and test them out. There's no stress, no worries. It's all a learning process. This is new for everyone. And we just want to give you a few tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. So today we were going to talk about the Hugging Face Spaces, which is a great place to get started if you want to just get your feet wet and try to test out a few different tools where they may not have an app yet, but it's just a way to test out some of the latest innovations in generative AI. So what
Yeah,
do you
so
have?
um, yeah, so thank you, Heather, for having me on. My real name's Miguel, but I go by Angry Penguin on Twitter and X. I have sort of contributed a bit to Hugging Face and the existing ecosystem around there, and also some other open source tooling. But yeah, it really is sometimes complex to try out these like generative AI apps and like understanding what's going on. And really, sometimes you want to know what's going on, right? Like what's going on under the hood? Like how can I explore more? And so today we're going to just be going over, how these things sort of work, how it goes from like research paper to code to app, and just go through that entire process and what I personally use to keep up to date with a lot of things. So I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen if that's cool with you, Heather. And we'll
Absolutely.
kick this thing off. Cool. All right, cool. So on my screen here, we have let me just go to the home page. So Hugging Face is it's a sort of startup that is working to provide like better tooling and a better ecosystem for essentially just generative AI in general. They have a bunch of different libraries that make it really easy to run large language model inference and then also like image model inference. Inference means just getting the model to do something uh, in very simple terms. So the here we're on like the Hugging Face main page. When you log in, create an account, you can see what like people posting updates, really cool stuff. You can see what's trending. All these things are like very interesting to see. So we can see that right now, Stable Diffusion 3 just got released, and so that's trending. And you can go to a space and try out Stable Diffusion 3 if you want. And maybe people are talking about it, seeing, right now there's a lot of discussion around like the licensing of Stable Diffusion 3. So you can probably go on there and see that. Just keep up to date with things. You can also see there's other things trending like OpenAI. Oh, I guess OpenGPT 4.0, which is probably a fine tune of GPT 4.0. Anyways, there's a bunch of stuff on here that really helps you keep tapped in with what's going on in Gen AI. The thing that I really like though, the thing that I'm always like sharing on Twitter and like always making are these things called spaces though. So if you navigate right here to the up top, let me actually zoom in a bit. Uh, let's see. Oh, I'm on Mac. There you go. Cool. So if you go to spaces, here you can see sort of like the spaces of the week and what's trending, what's kind of like hot now as curated by the Hugging Face team. And you can kind of see like just different things, right? So for instance, Hallow is one that's trending right now. So we'll go ahead and click into that. And you get like a really brief description of what Hallow is at the top here. So demo for Hallow, hierarchical audio-driven visual synthesis for portrait image animation. Very complex like research name, right? But essentially it's just taking an image and animating it sort of like as a talking head avatar. And so,
Yes.
yeah, you can just come right down here and drag an image and drag like a driving audio, and then you'll get like your talking avatar. So that's one of like the beauties of Hugging Face Faces. It's like really simple
Well,
to use.
I will give a note of caution sometimes for people when you're using these. Make sure you pay attention to the instructions because, like for this particular one, you have the audio that you use has to be in a WAV format, not in an MP3. So it'll give you a few things that will help you use it a little bit faster, and also helpful tips for how to prompt if there's a prompt or any settings you need to do for that. I just learned that the hard way. So. Not
Yeah,
having what I
these
needed.
these apps are usually rough around the edges, mainly because it's like a researcher making it or an open source developer sort of contributing to it, putting it together. It's definitely not like a finished web application or like web service that typically we pay for, but Yeah, I think it's really interesting just to try the things out when they come out, right? Like, usually you'll have somebody in the open source community make a little app, and you can just go try it. Like, it's really amazing. Um, yeah, and I think maybe we should talk a bit about like how it goes from like GitHub to maybe
Right.
Hugging Face Space.
Yes. And how this is kind of like there's not one particular the developer or builder of this. It's what when once they're doing the research and they have the research paper published, how do you get from that point to a space?
Yeah, so
Or
okay,
yeah.
typically, yeah, you'll go into here into the files. So this is like the user facing app, right? Like the Hugging Face space. But if you dig into here in the files,
Oh,
you'll see a
that's
bunch of
helpful.
things in here about like, you can essentially see how the app is running like under the hood in the files. And this is sort of just like GitHub. It has, the directory and all that stuff. So it has various different scripts. This one's a little complicated, so let's go to an easier one,
And
just
if
so
you
I can,
understand
walk everybody
code a
through.
little, if you understand the code at all, or you drop it into ChatGPT or a different chatbot to kind of understand it. If you want to click on any of those to drop down and just understand what's going on with the code, if you're learning to code, or even if you don't put it into, or even use a the vision for your different chatbot so that it can help you understand how it works. If you want, if you
Yeah,
choose to go
absolutely.
that deeply.
Yeah, you can use ChatGPT to like help you understand like what's going on. But essentially, like for some of the more simple apps, you have everything here. Sorry, I did that kind of fast. If you go here into files, you can then click into the app.py, which is the Python script to, run the application. And everything is here in this one file. So it makes it really easy to understand, okay, what am I doing here, right? So I guess like as a very simple like walkthrough, you're like sort of importing all the things that you need to, and then you're using Stable Diffusion 3 using the diffusers library from Hugging Face. And then, it's sort of making the application here. So these are like really simple ways if you're like trying to get hands-on with generative AI in general, like where you can come and learn. But yeah, let's talk a bit more about how it goes from sort of code, checkpoints, model release to Hugging Face Space, right? Like, so this is Stable Diffusion 3. It just came out, I don't even know, like 2 weeks ago, last week, something like that.
Hmm.
And typically when the things come out, it's sort of just like a checkpoint. There's like a model. And so if we go into the files, it's just like a bunch of this, like what looks like gibberish, right? They come with like checkpoints, safe tensors, you name it. And so
So
what,
what can you slow down for 1 second? What is a checkpoint for people who hear the term and I can't really even articulate it. So,
yeah,
oh,
so a checkpoint is essentially, think of it as the model, right? Like, so essentially like Stable Diffusion, whenever you're downloading different models, they're typically called checkpoints, right? So they can also be called safe tensors. Safe tensors are the like safer version of a checkpoint. Checkpoints can sometimes have malicious content in there. Not all the time, but people can inject that into there. So you'll want to see you want to be downloading the safe tensors versions whenever you're using something. So whenever
okay.
you go to like Civet AI or Hugging Face, you're downloading checkpoints slash safe tensors, and that's what you're using to. It's essentially like, think of it like the engine, right?
Mhm.
Getting what you're getting the things out of is the safe tensors. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make
Thank
sense?
you. Yeah, it does. Thank you. I
Okay.
didn't
Cool.
really realize that.
Yeah. So the different sometimes people fine tune the checkpoints, right? And so that they give you like different styles, things that are inside of them. And so, yeah, when you download like a stylized checkpoint, you can put that in, and so you get a different result. And so we can cover that at like a later time. But
Okay.
yeah,
No, thank you. Just to understand, like when you're seeing the safe tensors and why you want to make sure that you download that and what if people are using interchangeably the checkpoint and safe tensors, just to know that they are the same thing, but they're the safer checkpoints, right? Or for
yeah,
that
and
to
lately,
download that model.
lately security's kind of been an issue, I think, in the open source like Gen AI space. So definitely make sure that you're using the safe tensor format, just to make sure that you're safe and you're not like downloading anything malicious on on your hardware. So
Yeah,
I personally
absolutely.
always recommend Hugging Face because they do very rigorous checks on what comes in,
Okay.
and they have like great upload speed. So I definitely recommend Hugging Face, but at a later time we can go over Civet AI as well, which has a lot of the like artist community there as well.
That's a good point.
So yeah, let's maybe dig into some more of these spaces. So yeah, like you can have everything here from like image generation, video generation, language generation as well. So if you want to use like, the equivalent of ChatGPT, they have like Open GPT 4.0 right here. And now Hugging Face wants to use your microphone. Okay, for now. Now we can try, and I guess it's even like plugged into the web as well.
Oh, so different ways you can run GPT 4.0 without your OpenAI account. So
Yeah, so I think
basically,
this one might be a fine tune of GPT 4.0, I think.
yeah.
I'm not
So it
even
looks
sure
like
what's
it's
going on here.
pretty cool. That it gave, so it had today's news from Open. So this is connected to Open. It's sending that message out to the Open AI's GPT 4.0 API, right? So I guess we can look and see.
Yeah, let's
Or
let's look and see exactly what it's doing. It's sending out an API request to, let me just control that. It's not going to be there. Yeah, maybe we can edit this one out.
yeah, they have the OpenAI logo there, and with a little bit more time. Another thing that people might want to, like, when you have a Hugging Face account, for certain things that require GPU or you have to pay, they would have to set up a payment through, like, set up some type of billing in Hugging Face so that they can run or duplicate a space into their own, like a quick thing for that. I don't know if that would be helpful for
Yeah,
people.
let's go ahead and walk through it. There's some like things that you want to avoid when duplicating a space as well. So okay, let's just go and duplicate like Hallow, right? So
Mhm.
okay, so yeah, as Heather mentioned, Hugging Face lets you duplicate a space, and you might think, oh, I'm paying for it now. Like Hugging Face is going to make money off of this, but the reality of it is all you're really paying for is like the GPU at the price per hour that is usually pretty close to market rate. So it's a lot better than paying like $50 a month for a service. The problem
Yes.
is when you use a service, everything's kind of set up neatly for you. So yeah, typically you'll have less like duplicate this space icon up here, and then you can click on
Mhm.
that, and that'll enable you to duplicate it. If not, and you don't see that on the space, you can just come right here to this top 3 ellipses, click on that, and then duplicate the space that way. So yeah, when you duplicate
Okay.
the space, it's going to come up here. You're the owner. What do you want to call the space? The space name. What's the visibility? Is it public? Is it private? You want to set it to private because otherwise people are going to, if you're making it for yourself, set it to private. So that way other people don't come in and like, start jumping in your queue and slow down your inference time. And
Oh,
typically
that's,
they'll,
I didn't think
yeah.
about that. Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes people like set theirs to public, and then people are just like using their thing for free. You don't want to use that. You want like the fastest thing possible that you're paying for, right?
Because you're only
Um,
going to get billed once a month, right? So you're not going to get billed every time you use it. So you may not even remember what you were spending when you were, on it. So people could be using yours, and you wonder why it's high. But
yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Good tip.
hmm So typically it'll come with like a hardware suggested. I would go with that because whoever sets up the space, in order to get it to run, you have a constraint on how much VRAM is using. So typically, yeah. So these the recommended hardware usually meets that constraint, right? So here we have, it looks like this is pretty VRAM intensive, so it uses a lot of GPU power. So we're gonna go with this one here, this L4 that's suggested. And then this is like this hugely important one. Make sure you always have like, honestly, I would even go more aggressive than an hour, maybe like
Oh,
15 minutes of inactivity, because what happens is Hugging Face charges you by the time you're using the GPU, right? So if you're saying, all right, I'm gonna like put up a render because it takes 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and like cook breakfast or something, make a coffee, and then come back in an hour. You're getting charged for that like time that you might not be using the space, right? So just make sure that you set that in activity. You don't want to like, 1 month get like a $500 bill and you're like, what happened here? Because you left the
Yeah.
space running indefinitely. All right, so we duplicated the space and now it's building. You can see that it's sort of working here. We can look into the build right here. You don't really need to know what's going on, but essentially it's doing all of its technical things to get up and running. Sometimes this does take a while, so feel free to just hang around and wait. You won't be charged for the
So
time while
so
it's building. Yeah.
oh, that's good. And now what about when it's running and it's something that takes quite a while, you're being charged for that?
Yeah, you're
It's,
being charged for that. Yeah.
because it's not sleeping. So if it's an app that takes a good bit of time to render the actual image or video or the output that you're seeking, then it's you're going to be billed for that time. So it does give you this price at that point when you go to duplicate it. And also you get charged even when you don't duplicate it, correct? When you're running
When you're
on.
actually when you're not duplicating it and you're using the space that is public by the author, you actually don't get charged for that. So that's why like
Oh,
Hugging
okay.
Face is so amazing for like the everyday user. If you want to just come out and check these things out, it's completely free to use. Hugging Face sponsors the
Okay.
GPUs. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so while this is building, I think let's also go over another really great place to, I think, run a lot of these open source things, and that's actually Glif. Glif is one of my favorite because you can just come in here, and what this is right here, this is IP adapter animate diff. Essentially, not going too technical into it, it's essentially animating stable diffusion, and we can talk about like what exactly that means later, but essentially adding motion to typically what would be like a text to image sort of thing. And so Glyph runs entirely on
Okay.
Comfy UI, and when you like Comfy UI, I should probably explain what Comfy UI is. It's that like node-based system that's getting really popular these days. It allows you to like get a lot of control over the thing that you're running and really get under the hood. But yeah, Glyph runs is very heavy on open source. So similar to Hugging Face, when you're going into the files, you can like remix a Glyph and see all the things that are going into it to like understand what's happening under the hood. So Glyph, you think of like Hugging Face as like the more technical option. Glyph is sort of the
Um,
like, I guess I hate when people say
the
this, but like the low code option, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what I think it's called, and that's why I think that it kind of, builds itself as a low code, and it's more for yeah, this would be more if you don't wanna deal with the little technical things or you can still see the code there and how or at least for how it's running and comfy. That's pretty cool, and especially this kinda thing helps you learn if you want to build an app or if you want to learn how to take it from your computer, anybody can build these, right? So that and to share it with other people. So you can become an app builder by using these types of tools.
Yeah, so this one here, it's like really crazy. This is probably one of the more complicated like Comp UI setups that you can get. We'll go over in a later video how to get started with Comp UI, get an image, and eventually get to here. But yeah, like again, this is like you have all this like crazy stuff going on in the back, and then you can just sort of go back to the Glyph thing, and you just all you see is really the inputs of what you put in. So that's why Glyph is a really amazing tool.
And what did you click on to get to the code?
Yeah, you
Did
go
you
to this
just
little
scroll
remix
down?
button here.
Oh, over there. Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that. Oh,
So
okay.
you go to remix, and then you get under the hood of what's going on behind this like little
Oh,
application. So
so
it's
it's your
very
choice
similar.
what you how deep you want to get in that.
Yeah, so it's very similar to like the
Awesome.
files here in Hugging Face, right? Where you come to the files and this is like what's under the hood of the app, but it's presented in a much more friendlier manner, right? Like way easier to
Yes.
kind of understand. Okay, this is an image, right? As opposed to like when you go here into like the app.py, it's not really clear to you if you don't understand code, like what's like the image coming in here, right? So it's like source image here. It's right there, right? Versus like, coming to the glyph and it's like obviously right there. So
Right.
yeah,
Like a visualization of the code in a
yeah,
way.
right,
So
yes.
that like a wrapper on it.
So yeah, I mean, it looks like our demo's running now. So it did everything it
Okay.
needed to do, and we have it running. Let's go ahead. Actually, don't have a face and
I know.
audio.
I was just thinking if you want to,
They have some
let me
samples here.
see if I, oh, perfect.
Let's go
And
ahead.
that's helpful too. If you don't know, if you don't have what you need, check, play with the sample.
Let's go ahead and get that image, and then
And I will say to like, say you have something, you have an MP3, if you have a voice from 11 Labs, I think 11 Labs or a lot of voice apps, they will give you voice generators. The files will come in an MP3 format. There are tons, just search Google free converters. There's free tools that will convert any app, any file type, and there's just tons of them. I use them all the time. You can convert MP3 to a wave to any type of different things. And if you ever have that issue, there's tons of them. Cloud Converts one, Free Convert. Adobe has several that there's free converters within that where you don't have to pay for an Adobe account. But yeah, if you ever want to do that, don't worry. The video files, there's ways you can trim audio. You can compress them to make them, smaller file size, depending on what you're working with. There's just Google it.
yeah, absolutely. As Heather mentioned, Google's your best friend here for getting a lot of the files like converted the way you need to. Because yeah, like I mentioned, these apps are typically rough around the edges because it's people doing them for free. No one's really getting paid to sort of put these things together. I mean, they might be working for like a research lab, but even then, it's like on their free time. So yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of work with what you got, and Google's your friend.
And also for the I had a question on the top of my head about for the way that this is ways for people to try out the research that people have been putting into these tools. And as they want your feedback, a lot of the builders want to hear what do you like about it, and what are the things that you're noticing. This is all new, where especially for this, the point of this for Hallow is they want it's audio driven visual synthesis for portrait image animation. So they're going to try to make portraits or images speak. So you can't just go and put a tree on there and expect it to, start speaking. You want to have a face that has, obvious facial eyes, nose, mouth that's looking forward. And it even tells you that for the source image, what you want to have. So this one, it only takes English. So whatever you're downloading, translate it, have it translated into English. I think we'll have to look at some translation apps, things like that, because that's what it was trained on, correct? So all these little things will help you understand how this works and to get them the most optimal response or output when you're running these things. But let's say 3 seconds of audio takes greater than 10 minutes to generate on an L4 duplicate. Okay, that was at the top. So never mind. I divert on that. But yeah, just try to use things and don't be too harsh, like AP said. These things are built for us to try it and for the world to kind of get an idea of how this stuff works. And constantly improving, but don't think that it's an app that people, it's not working well and you're going to complain and get your money back. It's not what it's for. This is all research based and new for us to try.
Yeah, so as Heather said, you want to follow the instructions because typically they're laid out in a certain way. And yeah, like I said, open source contributors, open source app. And maybe you do want to try a tree, right? Maybe you find out that putting the tree in there actually
Yeah.
works, and then you can go in like to the community tab here and share that with the developers. Be like, hey, this actually
Oh,
works with
that's
like
a good point.
non-human figures, right? For whatever reason, and they can go back to their research and figure out why that's the
And if
case.
I also that's what I wanted to mention was open source. People hear open source, but everyone may not understand what is it and why is it important.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of like very there's a lot of layers to that one. I would say that open source is essentially what it means is you can go out and well, there's even different definitions of what open source is, but you can go out and you can find the weights, you can find the things to download, like the models and all that. You can download them, sort of like how Stable Diffusion 1.5 is. So let's go in.
Or you're working with the source code because they put that code out there. It's not hidden, and it's what you do with that source code. that if different people have taken it and used it in different types of ways.
Yeah,
It,
definitely. And then, like, to add to that too, like, a lot of it has to do with the license, right? So Stable Diffusion 1.5 has a very friendly license as well as Stable Diffusion XL. And so that's why a lot of people are using it, right? Because they can use it in their applications and don't really have to pay. And in exchange, people typically like contribute back to the community in different ways, right? Like via education, training new models, training new LoRa's, doing all these like sort of things to build out the tools and the ecosystem. And, there's things that are sort of like in the gray area of are they open source? Like Stable Diffusion 3, which you can go out and download the models and use the checkpoints and all that sort of fun stuff. But the license is very restricting. And so the community's kind of backlashed on Stable Diffusion 3. I won't get into like my opinions on that, but that's just sort of like being open source can sort of be a gray area sometimes. So you always want to check the license. And typically they're
and
gonna
when
be
you
your
say for checking the license too, like when people like right now, not even necessarily just what's happening with Stable Diffusion 3, but like the way that you're able to use the things that you produce, that you generate with that, correct? And whether you can use it for your business or for yourself, if you can put it on a book cover or a music video, the way that you're going to use these types of things and who owns it, correct? So, like, th the license and what you're allowed to do with it, and if that makes sense?
Correct, yeah, so it's
Yeah,
like the license of, can you use this in an app? And then also, what can you do with the outputs? And, like, when are you sort of restricted? So, again, not to go into Stable Diffusion 3 so much, but I think there's, like, a cap for 6,000 images generated a month, right? So if you're generating over 6,000 images a month using Stable
okay.
Diffusion 3 on your computer, you have to then get, I think, like, an enterprise license or something like that. So there's very, like, quirky
Ah,
restrictions sometimes with some of these licenses. So if you use something that's, like, open, let me zoom in a bit. I really like this license a lot. The Creative ML OpenRail M, you can use that kind of however you want, but
okay,
to your own liability if you do something you're not supposed to. But yeah,
okay.
that's like sort of
Yeah.
the difference on the licenses. Let's check in if this is done. It probably isn't because they said 10 minutes. Probably should have chose a different one.
No, that's okay, and because this is one of the newer ones, and, what we can,
Let me kill
let me
this
think,
one. Actually.
because there are different like, going through the spaces, say you heard about something and you want to just check out people are writing, you can write articles, so you can kind of follow people, and write and read the articles to kind of help with to understand a little bit, if you want to learn something different. um, there's a lot where you can follow people. I believe I'm following you on here, so you can follow different people because AP has some spaces on here in demos he's built and an app, at least one app. So you can see different people, what they've been interact with them. There's a feed. Is there a way that you can message people on?
I don't think so. I don't think Hugging Face has native like messaging built in, but there is like the community tab you can message, you can reply on people's posts. But typically, like if you go to my Hugging Face space or my Hugging Face thing, I'll have my Twitter here, and you can kind of just like shoot me a message. You can kind of just shoot me a
Ah, I
message
see.
and get in touch with the researchers that way. Usually they'll have their DMs open. So yeah.
Okay, cool. But then also, but the community part is a lot going on there, but it's a pretty vibrant community and it's a great service. It seems like for Hugging Face to have this as a way for you can read about what other people are posting and you can expand on it and see. Let's see, I was just kind of like reading through that a little bit, but it's just kind of like a different forum for people. It is a forum and has a feed that you can see examples from people who are doing different things and trying out some of these spaces and some of the code. And wow,
Yeah, and like this one
there's a
right
lot
here,
going on there.
this one's like a really interesting post by Merv. So it's saying like, hey, we have this new like vision model that just came out, and it can do a wide variety of tasks. If you want to try it, here's the demo, right? And so then you can just click into the demo, and now this is an image captioning. So I'm gonna upload an image of this young lady here, and using the model Lawrence too large, it should output like a caption of this. So let's go ahead and try. Yeah, caption a painting of a young girl with a flower in her hair. So just an example. Something comes out, you get a demo to play with it on Hugging Face. Super simple.
Then what can you do with this? You can use this as a prompt. And, that's one way people are, when you're trying to break down, it's a similar thing to vision, where it's coming up with a prompt, or clip interrogators, so another good one that I often use too, so that if you want to learn how to build a better prompt for something, and it'll tell you the caption is basically the what the AI sees, what it's trained on, and what it sees, and how it's going to render, that image. But yes, clip interrogator is another one. Pharmapsychotic, I use this frequently, and it will, if you drop in the image, it'll give you a prompt back, or give you a description of it, which would be a caption, right? Or the way, I think that's how we explain it, but
Correct. Yeah. So when you upload an image, it essentially tells you what Clip thinks its like interpretation of it is. So then when you go into Stable Diffusion or any of these like Stable Diffusion based services, you can just plop that caption that it gives you, and get something very closely resembling to your output. So yeah, there's a ton of these little apps that are extremely useful and built on the foundations of open source that you can just come here and use for free on Hugging Face, right? They're providing the GPU space. And if you really want to, again, like learn more about what's going on under the hood, you can come here to the files and just really dig in, like this app.py. It's a great place to learn not only like programming, but how to use it with machine learning. Yeah.
that's a good point too. Yes. So you may not understand, well, you may not understand some of the language. Like I don't know how to code Python, but I can look at this. I can understand JavaScript and how some of these things work with Node and Node.js, and um, different what the libraries, how they're importing different things, and where they're pulling it at when they're sending out the request, and just different things that they're doing. You can kind of see and learn. This is a way for you to learn, and continuous learning, and how do you add these things onto your knowledge base that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugging Face is like the hands down place to go if you're trying to like really learn about these models and like what's going on in open source. The team is amazing, and they have a Discord. I think it might be linked here at the bottom of the page. Let me actually go back to the page. Maybe they don't have it linked, but they do have a Discord. We'll drop the link in the YouTube chat and go in there, say hi. The team is super friendly. But yeah, Hugging Face is definitely my favorite place to go for learning about these things.
Yeah, I do. I think this is a good place to start. And I'm trying to think of some of the fun apps that are out there, fun spaces that you can go into, and just a place to learn. Because I find myself, what do you do to learn new things, and how to, what's out there? How do you keep track of it? Do you come on here, or is it things that you're reading, apps that you're using
Yeah,
to know,
so
or
I'll give my secret, like my secret sauce away is I come here and I follow AK. He always is posting like what's new, what's hot in the Gen AI space. You come here and, for example, you just honestly you can just look at his Twitter feed and
oh,
he has everything that's going on, right? So you
wow,
can come here like image plus hybrid controls equals like video, right? Like this one looks really crazy. Like I don't even know what's going on there, but it looks like they're controlling the video somehow. I can
yeah,
see how the cat's moving its head. So yeah, I highly recommend
yeah.
following AK. It is his username. Let me zoom in on that. Akalik.
AK Halik, yes. Oh.
Forgive me if I
So
mispronounce that, but yeah.
there's different ways to, people get information. You don't have to, there's not necessarily a feed that you're going to. It's just different people, and people that are into the same types of things that you like, and that, or they have a wide variety of information on there, that, different newsletters. It just depends on where you're at, or if you go to even like, well, no, for Hugging Face and for different tools that are out there, this is a great place to go to. Thank you.
Yeah,
Now I have to
absolutely.
start paying attention.
Yeah, and then, like, sometimes you can see that he'll post, like, a research paper, and there isn't a demo for it yet, right? So maybe we can find one here. Like, yeah, the code will well, this one doesn't have the code, right? But he'll have a link to the GitHub code, and there's not a Hugging Face space, and you can challenge yourself, "Hey, let me go ahead and try and see if I can put this into an application on Hugging Face space." That's how I learned, right? So he would tweet something out, and I'd be like, "Okay, how can I challenge myself to, like, take this code, work with it, and then build a little app on top of it?" And that's, like, a really fun and, like it's a really fun way to learn how to code because 'cause you're, like, doing something that doesn't exist, and sometimes it can blow up and get really viral, and that's always, like, a great feeling.
And tell people that you didn't know how to code, you don't have a background, a developer background or anything like that. You learned on your own through doing things like that, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I actually yeah, I'm not a technical I didn't come from, like, a technical background, and I learned that way, right? Like, seeing something, I really wanted to play with it, trying to figure out, like, "Okay, how do I, like, make something other people can use?" And the answer was I needed to learn how to program. So, thanks to a lot of the help from, Human, Robin, Pharmapsychotic, and then also Miklos, they kind of, like, coached me up in how to do this. Like, the people in open source are amazing, right? Like, if you're doing some of the work, like, to help other people out, you're gonna get it back like tenfold, which is like truly amazing and why I like highly recommend contributing to the open source ecosystem. Yeah.
I agree. I think that that is fantastic and that the community is different, that all people are willing to share. And most of this is just sharing knowledge, sharing cool stuff, sharing, helping people figure out a way to, create things that are different. This is all new. And, I don't have a background in, computer science or coding other than I went to a boot camp and learned how to, do some full stack developing. But if you don't use it, it doesn't really do you any good. I don't, but I use that as a way to learn how to learn. And that was the best thing that it taught me was, that there are all kinds of different ways to get to these output and to have something that works for you, it depending on what you're using it for. But don't be afraid to jump in at any age, no matter what you do, what your background is, just give it a shot
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
try to build on this. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm interested. I'll probably be on Hugging Face for the rest of the day, playing with things.
Yeah, it's really fun and like I said, you just so much to learn and so much to take in and things are always changing. So like I was talking to a friend about this. They're like, I feel so new to the space. And I'm like, man, in like 6 months, you're gonna be an OG. The space moves just so fast and
Mhm.
it's still so new. So it's always an amazing time to get
Every
started.
week is a year,
Yeah.
or a week is a month, or a year, or something. I don't even know.
Yeah.
It just gotta like what we started on at the beginning of the week is seems like it was so long ago, and now what's next? Um, but that's what it's always something to look forward to. We do not have a dull moment ever.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's sort of my flow, how I like, keep up to date with things, how I learned things and how I continue to learn. And yeah, I hope you found that helpful. We're going to continue to dive into more like open source tools. I think maybe next week we can
Yes.
start looking into how image generation works and how to use like the basics like Comfy UI. But yeah, looking
Okay.
forward to, chatting with Heather more on here and then coaching people up on like what I know and maybe we can learn some things along the way as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we will share the our output later at the end of the video and that you can see what our lady is going to do once we get Hallow to generate, but it's going to take some time and that's okay.
Yeah.
But thank you all, and yeah, just come learn with us because we don't know everything, but we figure that we can help, share a little bit of what we do know and ways to get there and just kind of navigating everything that's going on right now in the generative AI space and what we have had some experience with and learn some new things too. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you,
And I
everybody.
appreciate you spending some time. And there's a lot to learn. So that's a good thing. We will have quite a few videos coming up soon. But tune in and you have a great day.
Okay, cool.
Goodbye, everyone.
Cool.